Hi, dear friend. So, are we in a cultural crisis or is this a new beginning? I did not see the press conference with the mayor-elect of New York. However, I saw a picture. Why is a little jerk just standing up the entire time? I mean, it looks like he's about to jerk off at any moment. It's like I'm just getting so aroused. I'm just gonna have to whack off as soon as the cameras turn off. Really? I don't know. I don't think this is a win for our president or our country. It's absolutely absurd that that little prick would be standing up the entire time during the press conference. Am I wrong, or did he eventually sit down, or did they not have a chair for him, or did he say that, he didn't have enough money to pay for a chair? I'm sorry. What absurdity this is. What absurdity we are living. What absurd times we are living in. And, something that really disheartened me the other day. My husband and I were just casually discussing. My mother loved. Let me make a list of all the people that my mother loved and all the musical bands that my mother loved. I mean, my father loved Wagner, number one. Beethoven, a very distant second. Tchaikovsky, a very distant third. Wagner, of course, you understand, yeah, where my father was coming from. Well, my father would commute to Cleveland for his job, and he couldn't do it every day anymore. It just became too long of a commute. And so he would basically just come home on the weekends, and he plays Wagner. But during the week, what would my mom play? Who would I put first on the list? I think I'd put Anne Murray first on the list, because everybody loves Anne Murray. And then she loves Judy Collins, Send in the clowns, where are... And if I make a reference to Judy Collins, I realize that some people just don't even get it. Because many people didn't like Judy Collins. She was like some sort of like a Juilliard sort of person. But wasn't she a girlfriend of James Taylor? And Carly Simon. Now, my mom never had a Carly Simon record. Interestingly, she seemed to have chosen sides. She liked Judy Collins. She liked James Taylor. She liked Kenny Rogers. I think I mentioned Anne Murray. Of course you did. That was the first thing you mentioned. Billy Joel. The Commodores. Don't make a mistake, Erica. You insulted the Commodores one time. Well, she insulted the person that I loved, which was Sade. Sade came out in the mid to late 1980s, and I listened to her tape over and over again. We had cassette tapes back then. And there was one song that I really liked. It never became a hit. It was Maureen. Maureen, Maureen, never gonna see you again. Wish you could meet my new friends. Wicky wacky party to the, like it's a jazz thing. My mother actually made fun of it, and she said, boring, boring. She could be really a mean person, And that kind of reminded me of how she really, her decision to have, can we say it, an adulterous affair with a coworker caused her to think that, well, she ought to demand a divorce from my father, who was never religious in the first place, but her religion made her think that, well, because she's committing adultery, she has to divorce my father. And then the guy she was having sex with had no interest in having a long-term relationship with her, and then she got breast cancer, and one of her tits had to get cut off. Boring, boring. That's the story of Mom's life. It's not very boring, is it? It's not very titillating. Yeah, that's the thing, that they had shopped me around to so many different babysitters, even before the second grade. And then I was bullied in the first grade by the girl, by the teacher. The teacher scared me out of my ever-living pants. I don't wet my pants. I don't remember being incontinent at that age. I had a pretty strong bladder control at that age. But that woman scared the living daylights out of me, so I hid under my desk. She was like a witch. I had such a friendly teacher the first half of second grade. And then this horrible woman is just bullying me, and then this teacher's pet, which actually became, I thought she was my best friend. I hope she thought that I was her best friend. Ding, 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 dong. She would torment me and taunt me because I wasn't very good at math, and I made my fours with a point instead of like an open four, a four with an open. I don't know, like there are two different ways of writing the number four, the Arabic numeral. So she would just come up to me and menace me. And she had a little friend that hated me too. Even in the first grade, I was being bullied. What? And then the second grade, that young blonde girl and I became fast friends because we realized that the teacher, it makes such a difference. The teacher sets the tone. The teacher creates an environment of, do we want to love one another? She praised me, and she praised that girl in front of the entire class because we were doing so well. And also she went on this drastic weight loss program, and I was just amazed because I would hear her on commercials for a weight loss program. It's not funny. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just tidbits of my life to let you know that I am an authentic person. I had rough times in the third grade. I had rough times in the fourth grade, and even in the fifth grade. However, when my mother announced, your father and I are getting a divorce, and she didn't sound like that at all. Maybe that's Satan's voice or something, because that wasn't my mom's voice. And she just stared at me across from the table. It wasn't even a kitchen table, because, well, we could talk about that later. But it was a little tiny, like a cafe table you might find, an expensive little table you might find in a museum or something. And my father wasn't even home. And I cried and I cried and I cried, and she just stared across the table at me like, eventually this little unwanted creature will get over her feelings. So if I'm not a normal person, I'm sorry if I cry. I cry reading books and things like that. At times I was like, oh, I'm crying. And I'm so embarrassed. I'm reading books in front of my children and I'm crying. So I guess that there's an aspect of me. I don't like people that are insensitive and that are mean. And so, again, Maureen, boring, as my mother renamed it, with Sade Adu. Beautiful voice, beautiful music, haunting, wonderful. But the whole theme of Maureen is, I'm never going to see you again. You are my wicky wacky, party to the I'm never going to see you again. There are times when people make decisions and they are life-changing. There are some things that people don't recover from. And so I'm not blaming my mother, because perhaps she had things that she didn't recover from. And that caused her to betray her religious beliefs, but she was surrounded by corrupt people. You have to think about that. I am absolutely, to this day, nobody can empathize with me at all. I lost everything when my parents agreed to the dissolution of their marriage, and I lost my best friend. And I had so struggled in school to make friends. My mother and my aunts, they always grew up with the same parents, and they bitched and moaned about how terrible their parents were, but at least they never had to go from babysitter to babysitter to babysitter, and from school to school to school. And I've even lost my brother. And all of my relatives have turned their back on me. It's really true. I mean, I have my maiden name. I know I may have unfriended you, but please forgive me. Why do you pretend that I don't exist? I don't understand this. It's just like, it's almost as if you feel as if your mother didn't want you. I'm against abortion, but some people justify abortion. I'm trying to be a very calm person here and trying to be very objective and say, well, some people say, well, if the child isn't wanted, it would be better if the child were aborted. As much as I have suffered, throughout childhood and throughout my adult life, I never would have decided to take my own life as my brother seemingly did, because I decided that my life did matter.